Good morning, Internet. Froggle here, and Rise of the Beast. It sure was a movie, and a pretty solid one at that. I'm going to wait to the Beast increase in elevation, but that's because I wanted to let my thoughts stew for a while before so I can make a well-informed and thought-out analysis and review of the movie, with a little bit of rambling. Real quick, if you haven't seen the movie, big spoilers. So if you don't want that, click off, I guess. Here's a quick spoiler-free synopsis of what I thought. It was pretty good. I really liked what it was trying to do, but it was just kind of a mess, and it didn't work out in the way I really wish it did. Now, pretty much everyone, when they talk about this movie, complain about how little Maximals are in it, but I think it's a little overblown. I see a lot of people saying that none of them are characters, and no, I feel like Primal is very well characterized. Air Racer, to some degree, is as well. She has a lot of screen time, but then again, doesn't get that much personality within it. She's more of an exposition spouter. And then Cheetor and Rhinox, yeah, they're tacked on just to make it look like there's more of a diverse beast cast, which sucks, yeah. You'd think that cutting a lot of the maximal screen time that you would expect would make way for, say, the villains. But the Terracons, they don't get what they deserve either. Only the Autobots and the humans have the screen time they deserve, and it's because of how short the movie is. But then again, because of how short the movie is and how little it focuses on certain aspects, it flows so well, and you kind of get into this weird mess of how to fix the movie and how impossible it would be, because so much of its cons are directly affected by its pros, and it's weird. So yeah, it flows really well for a modern CGI-focused action blockbuster movie. All of its moments of downtime are really well placed, and maybe if they had more moments of downtime, they would continue to be well placed, but I still feel like it wouldn't let it work in the way it does still. Maybe that transit scene could have spiced up that first act, but the first act was already so good as the way it eases you into everything. It's a struggle to complain about this movie because of just how much of a mess it is and the hole it's dug itself into with its pacing and its lack of focus. Alas, there are other complaints to be had. The humor is not great. It doesn't have this annoying energy of Michael Bay, and it's just a tad bit more generic, but I think I'll take the generic humor. It's not as cheesy as Bumblebee's humor, and I kind of like the cheesiness of Bumblebee, and I'd take it over this, but I take this over Bayverse, whatever. Mirage makes a little too many pop culture references, but that's just kind of how modern movies are. The voice acting in this movie is pretty solid, and I think Mirage's voice actor is what sells his lines more than the jokes themselves. Peter Cullen does a really good job as Optimus. Not that I doubted that he could perform a new take on Optimus, but I was just shocked at, honestly, how much better it seemed than the average Peter Cullen performance for the animated to Earthspark Optimus that we've seen. B had his radio voice, which I didn't really like, and overall, none of the other voice actors really, I think Peter Dinklage, did Scourge, and I didn't really recognize that was Peter Dinklage until I looked into the cast later. I think he did a pretty fun job. Yeah, it was great, and the style for character designs was pretty solid, and honestly didn't drift that far from the Bumblebee movie in terms of aesthetics and character designs. The Terracons especially really fit in with Dropkick and Shatter in my mind. Alright, enough. I'm not going to sugarcoat it any longer. I didn't buy Optimus's character arc. I feel like he's just too much of a jerk, and he doesn't really feel like an experienced leader, and I love the fact that it's a new take on Prime, but I don't think you should follow up to Bumblebee with a new take on Prime, because he felt like a pretty generic Prime, someone for Bumblebee to look up to, and now he's stuck with a character arc, and I feel like if they just gave Mirage a hero's journey, it would have been just as great, you know. I love the fact that they're giving one of the main Autobots a proper character arc. They didn't do that in the Bayverse. They kind of attempted it in 86, but gave up halfway. Alright, so we talked about the big thing plot-wise. Let's talk about the big thing scale-wise. Unicron. Was great to see him. He didn't do much. He was just the thing they had to fear, the threat, the things that made the Terrorcons a threat. But there wasn't much interesting stuff done with him. I guess he was technically from the future, I think. It was unclear. That could have been neat if it was touched on more. I like that it opened with Unicron destroying a planet. Amazing way to homage the 86 movie. Because now, instead of being a coolish introduction to Unicron, the destruction of that planet is what sets the plot into motion. We also get introduced to Scourge and Prime on that scene. We understand where the Maximals came from. They gave a kind of pointless 86 movie scene a proper purpose and tied it in to the beasts. We can finally get to the humans. Now, there was a lot less human screen time than usual, and yet it felt like the humans probably matter the most. They justified their reason to be there, and they felt like really thought-out characters. And yet I still kind of wish they were there less, because I want more beast screen time, you know? And then that G.I. Joe ending, I've seen a lot of people who are pretty negative about it, but I don't know, I think it could work. And just the little scene that was there, it got me to smirk. And then the post-credit scene definitely should have been, a part of the ending, and the G.I. Joe thing definitely should have been the post-credit scene, but whatever. I just really want to talk about this movie's weird lack of logic or thought. Now, Transformers movies are no stranger to a lack of logic and plot holes, but man, they just felt glaring in this one when otherwise the writing was relatively tight. It was the weird implied time travel stuff with the transwarp key. It's never really explicitly stated, but seemingly the transwarp key has the power of time travel. And that opens up a ton of plot holes, like, when the Maximals ever use it to stop Unicron, or did they use it and that was just never shown? Like, didn't they show that? Also, how did the Terrorcons get to the present if they're from the future? So, if the Maximals could split the transwarp key in half, why didn't they split it into, like, a million pieces and make it pretty much impossible for the Terrorcons to get their hands on? Okay, now let's just talk about that final battle real quick. It was a really fun time. Scourge had that super violent Bayverse-esque death scene, and I was fine with it. It didn't really make me feel like Optimus was a jerk. I felt like Optimus was a jerk because of his characterization in the movie. Battletrap's death was also pretty violent, and I'm not so much on board with that. He was defeated way too fast, and then while he was down, Primal decided to smash his head in super violently, and I was like, come on, it felt a little... He was unable to fight back, and so that's technically a war crime, but I guess they wouldn't really have the resources to take prisoners, but... Bumblebee got brought back to life fairly predictably, but I was expecting there to be a bit more of a Prime homage there. They'd have his voice box be fixed and stuff, but nah, they didn't do that, which was a little disappointing. I don't think the radio voice is really needed for this universe as Bumblebee. Unicron had his army of Scorpion Transformers for some reason, and I was expecting one of them to be called Scorponok, but they never did that, and come on, that's just lame. No Predacons at all. Alright, now, closing thoughts. I feel like this movie had a ton that was cut, and it feels like a very half-baked mess that turned out really good for something that's half-baked and a mess. All in all, I'd give the movie a 6.8 out of 10. It's good enough for what it is. If you're still watching at this point in the video, that's something you're statistically unlikely to do. So why not do something else you're statistically unlikely to do and press that subscribe button? Alright, Froggle out.